And welcome to the AVForums podcast for the 27th of August. I'm Phil Hinton, and joining me on this edition, our assistant editor, Steve Withers.
This is a story you will tell your grandchildren, and mightily bored they'll be.
Games editor, Mark Botwright.
I've got lunatics laughing at me from the woods.
And audio reviewer, Ed Selley.
There is a fire at the travel agency.
Welcome to yet another hour of some focused AV chat, mixed with what, Ed?
Banter. Isn't that what Malky Mackay calls it? Or probably want to steer clear of that.
Yeah,
actually.
let's not go there. So we start this week with another Hollywood star annoying Mark Botwright, and which has become quite a regular most weeks recently, and that is the death of yet another legend in the movie world, Steve, and that's Richard Attenborough.
Yeah, I mean, in all fairness, he was 90, so had a good innings, and I don't think he'd done much career-wise recently. But still, you know, sad news. I mean, he's been a fixture in the British film industry since the 30s, although he did start off usually playing snivelly, cowardly characters, apart from the character of Pinky in Brighton Rock, which he was particularly unnerving in. And then, of course, in the latter part of his career, in the 70s and 80s and 90s, he became a big-name director. Of course, won the Oscar for Gandhi, directed my favourite war movie of all time, which is A Bridge Too Far. And also did things like Oh, What a Lovely War and Young Winston, which I also rather enjoyed. Ed, you fill me in here probably. It involves one of the scenes is the last cavalry charge by the British Army, I believe.
I believe that's the case. I confess it's not a film I've seen, but yes.
Well, anyway, Winston Churchill was present at this last cavalry charge the British Army ever was involved in.
Yes.
And Gandhi and Chaplin as well. He made a biography of Chaplin, among other things. And of course, I suppose for a certain generation, he'll always be remembered as not Richard Hammond. What's his first name?
Father Christmas?
Yeah, Father Christmas, if you've seen America on 34th Street.
It's John Hammond.
John Hammond, thank you. Yes, John Hammond.
Richard Hammond.
I certainly had, I kept thinking Richard Hammond.
The hamster.
Now that's a biopic I'd watch.
John Hammond.
Particularly for the crash sequence.
Yeah, we spared my expense.
Yeah, but anyway, so for I guess for a generation of filmgoers, he'll always be John Hammond from Jurassic Park. We have a T-Rex. Possibly the worst Scottish accent in cinema history, in my opinion.
Yes, that was Steve.
Yeah.
Is that Mrs. Doubtfire?
Yeah, I'm sorry. No discussion of the worst Scottish accent in history is ever 2 words: Christopher Lambert.
Oh, well, he wasn't even trying, was he?
Well,
I mean, you had a
don't know.
Scotsman playing an Egyptian Spaniard and a Frenchman playing a Scotsman.
You don't know what being immortal does to the vocal cords.
Quite.
No,
It
you're
seriously
right.
affected Sean Connery's Spanish accent.
So we're going to go to gaming next, but it's hardware news, if that makes sense. So, Mark, if you've got a games console, what's the number one thing after peripherals that you need to have to play on your games console?
An internet connection?
No, that wouldn't be the case, would it?
So you're going to watch your game on an internet connection?
Well, it depends. It might be a handheld console. No. Sorry, I've got no idea what this bit is. What are we talking about?
Are you not looking at the running order that I sent you?
Oh, was this Hodges bit about TVs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For gaming.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The clue was in the title, but we'll let it go.
Right, yeah. No, I'm on message.
You're not awake though, are you?
Only
Just-
two.
just-
It is a bit early in the day for you, isn't it? 2:30.
Yeah, just to explain to people, we are recording this Tuesday afternoon. We normally record on a Monday evening, but obviously it was a bank holiday and the guys wanted their time with themselves last night. So, are we awake, Mr. Botwright?
Yep. No, I've got it. Yeah.
Okay, so
Definitely.
best TV for
From the
gaming
top, Phil.
is it a subject that you get asked about quite a bit?
No, if I'm going to be brutally honest, I think largely because the answer at one point would have been quite straightforward, which would have been plasma for response rate and contrast and the like. As obviously production has been scaled back on that front, should we say the question doesn't seem that pertinent anymore. You've got lots of kind of LCD, LED sets with their fancy kind of, X number of hertz modes on them with associated kind of problems therein. But generally, when it comes to gaming, I suppose some of the drawbacks previously that people would have leveled at, the LED sets, which would have been a question about, color fidelity, that kind of thing, natural colors. generally it doesn't really apply as much to gaming, simply because the palette is usually fairly lurid anyway. So they're not really known for gentle hues.
Sorry, I was thinking about the wonderful subdued tones of asteroids.
So I guess the big hot potato has always been input lag, Mark, when it comes to gaming. A frame here and there could cost you quite dearly. And I guess a lot of gamers, to start with, wouldn't actually realise that it's the TV that was the problem.
No, because I mean you've got this kind of chain, so therefore it could be anywhere. I think very much there are some people who place a great emphasis on that. I mean, there's a lot of talk about quality of netcode for online games and how dedicated servers you want. Obviously, the minimal amount of hurdles between what you're pressing a button, what that's doing as an impulse, and sending it through to actually make something happen. Certain games almost seem to kind of predict that with how they're setting up. So therefore, you're always slightly behind what's happening, and that leads to certain kind of accusations that obviously it's the game, and that's what I always say. It's a broken game. That's the reason why I always end up low on the leaderboards. But yeah, I mean, it's something that very much, if you're very serious about it, then obviously, yes, you want absolute minimal lag.
Okay, so I'm going to go to the main gaming guru now on the podcast because he went out and bought a console. Steve, when...
Yeah, I've got a console.
So
I have connected to a television.
Of course, and we are talking about input lag. It is something that we have tested for quite a number of years now. On TVs, we actually test the input lag. So just quickly explain the little device that we use and how it's done and how accurate it is.
Yeah, it is a little box that you connect to the TV via HDMI. There's a little button on it you press, which when you press it starts sending a signal down to the television. And there's a photoreceptor on the box that you place over the image that's being projected onto the put on TV by the box, and it measures the response time from going from the device into the TV and then being received by the photosensor. So it's pretty simple in a way that it works, but very, very effective. I mean, previously we'd had to do things like we'd put up a stop clock, basically a stopwatch, a timer on the screen, and a timer on the laptop, photograph the two and see what the delay was between the laptop and the TV that you're using.
Of course, you would also use another display which had no lag whatsoever, like a CRT.
There was also, if you had a CRT, yes. Well, I haven't seen a CRT in a few years, but
but that used to be the
that
way
would be the CRTs, no delay, therefore ideal for comparing. But the easiest way of doing it prior to us using the device, which was developed by a guy called Leo Bondi, wasn't it? It's a clever little device, and it works really well. And we've been using it now for about 2.5 years, I think. And it basically it means that we're using the same device. Both Mark and I are using the same device on every TV. So there's a very consistent measurement going on here, and it varies from year to year in terms of the input lag. And it obviously varies from manufacturer to manufacturer. A lot of it depends on how much processing power is going on and how much that's being bypassed in the game mode, because most TVs will have a game mode. And the idea behind it is it bypasses as much processing as possible, therefore reducing the input lag. And for very competitive gamers, they want it to be as low as possible. Then I know you can buy dedicated monitors if you're a PC gamer and that kind of thing that have very, very low, almost no input lag. But I mean, for a consumer television, generally, I think we've measured this year. Sony have been the outright winners this year in terms of input lags. Mark's measured down as low as 18-20 milliseconds, which is very low for an LED LCD TV. Obviously, plasmas are kind of gone now, so that's not really an issue anymore. We found that the average is between 30 and 40 milliseconds on most LED LCD TVs. This is 1080p. Moving on to Ultra HD 4K, there's more processing being done there. So you tend to find a slightly larger input lag, around about 40, 50 milliseconds, sometimes as high as 60, depending on the manufacturer. Obviously, if you're buying a 4K TV, there isn't really much 4K gaming unless you've got a massively high-spec PC rig. But but in terms of image quality, you get the benefits of additional upscaling. But obviously, that does add to the input lag, which is the problem with the 4K TVs. But certainly, if you're buying a full HD television, either for both for watching TV and for gaming, then you can expect anything between sort of 18 to 20 milliseconds up to about 30 to 40 milliseconds, depending on the manufacturer. But at the moment, the winners this year at least have been Sony, who have produced TVs.
What would you say was acceptable, Steve? I mean, I've got a figure in my head, but what would you say would be acceptable?
Generally, I'd say anything below 40 milliseckons is good.
Yeah,
around 50 milliseconds is great. I haven't got cat-like reactions, and I'm not a particularly competitive big-time gamer. You'll get guys on the forums who go like, I can see, 10 milliseconds is too slow for me. But I think once you start taking into account your internet connection, the delay between the controller and the console, and the TV and the console, there's so many factors.
You're playing solitaire.
Yeah, and the fact that you're a 40-year-old male whose reactions aren't what they used to be, then there's lots of factors in there, and 10 milliseconds here or there, I don't think it's going to make any difference to anybody. But there are guys that will claim that they can tell the difference, and maybe they can. But certainly anything about 30 milliseconds is going to be good in my book. Yeah.
Any input on that? Excuse the pun, Mark?
No, generally I'm vastly quickly heading towards kind of Steve's state of it's my own, should we say, crap skills rather than any kind of input lag that's the main difference.
Okay, let's move things on. You can read Mark's article. It is on the homepage at the moment. What are the best TVs for gaming? And he rounds up across a number of technologies what have measured the lowest in our tests. And like we say, we've got about 2 or 3 years data now, Steve, on every TV that we get in. It is measured, so there is quite a bit of data there. And if you want to find that out on your TV or a TV you're thinking about buying and we've reviewed it, then you will find the data in the reviews. So let's move on to Ask the Idiots. Melton Boy said, based on today's available content, what TV technology would you choose from the current models, and would the answer be different if 4K Blu-ray had been announced or has been announced? So let's go to Ed first. Ed, based on the content that you watch and the available content, which TV technology, if you were going out to buy a TV, would you choose?
If I was going out to buy a TV, that's the tricky bit, because for me, where I have no 4K content and no 4K viewing system, so I'd still be looking for a 1080 screen. I guess I'd have to hunt round and find another last of the line Panasonic Plasma. For the moment, that's what my requirement would be. If I was suddenly and mysteriously richer, that is to say I haven't bought a kitchen and stuff like that, I suppose I would definitely be interested in demoing some OLED screens and seeing if they justify the increase in cost over these last-of-line plasmas, and seeing if I can justify that to myself. I don't think I'm realistically going to be in a position to afford 4K OLED anytime soon. That's what I imagine my next screen will be, but I'm optimistically believing I'm going to get a bit more time out of my current screen before that sort of rears its ugly head. So if I needed to replace a screen tomorrow, I'd be a Luddite. I'd be trying to hunt down a plasma. And it's weird. I met up with a friend of mine on Saturday, and it turns out that he's emigrating to the States next year, and he mentioned that his KRP 600 might be going begging. And do you know
really?
what? I might make an offer, make a play for that. See where we go.
Okay, but what if they announced Blu-ray 4K tomorrow? Would it change your mind?
Well, because I've never bought an LCD television and I have no intention of buying one anytime soon, that would be a complicated one. I'd have to hang fire and see. I'd still be inclined to hang fire just in the immediate term and see what the 4K OLED situation is and whether it comes under the pipe dream or something that can be afforded with a bit of forethought. So that would probably be my answer there.
Okay, cool. I think I would be along the same lines, Ed. I think I'd go out and I'd try and find a ZT65 if there was still one available. That's what I'd go looking for. If I couldn't find one of them, I would look seeing possibly about an OLED and a 1080 one, I think. In terms of 4K Blu-ray, if they announce that tomorrow, I'd buy a 4K projector. Not interested in a 4K TV. The only 4K panel I would buy would be for my PC, because I've started editing in 4K, and it'd be nice to see it in 4K. Mark Botwright?
I'd probably follow Ed down the kind of Luddite route and offer his friend £10 more for his set.
Oh, it's a bidding war now. You're after.
Yeah.
Eh?
Don't forget, Ed lives on eBay, so
Been watching too much daytime TV.
And if 4K was announced, are you interested? 4K Blu-ray?
Possibly, but I think that would be... I'd want to see what was available, how affordable it was going to be, simply because I think it's one of those cases where when you've replaced the collection on DVD and then you've replaced the collection on Blu-ray, there's a certain amount of fatigue where you just kind of think how expensive will the discs be and how much is it going to cost to replace everything? Are we going to see it all kind of remastered? There are a lot of variables in there for me to want to say, yes, definitely I'd jump through that hoop just for 4K Blu-ray.
Okay. And Mr. Withers?
Well, if there's no 4K Blu-ray and my Kuro suddenly broke down, I would probably be looking at an OLED replacement if I could find one. The only thing is, at the moment, you've only got LG supporting the technology, really, and I wouldn't be that keen on it being curved. So if I could find a nice flat OLED, 55-inch OLED, that would be interesting. I'll be curious to see what happens over the next couple of weeks with IFA coming up in terms of announcements. Hopefully LG are going to be true to their word and really push technology at realistic prices, in which case it would be much more tempting. If I could find something at the right price point and with a flat screen OLED would be my preferred choice. If 4K Blu-ray became available suddenly, or I could at least watch 4K Netflix even with a higher broadband connection, I think from a TV perspective, I'd probably currently, given the ones that I've seen, go for the Sony X9. I think that's a lovely picture. But like you, Phil, I'd be more inclined to get a 4K projector because really to benefit from 4K, you want as big an image as possible.
Yeah, totally. And if it's movie material, I want to see it on the big screen. Don't want to watch
so
it
in the absence of my current television, I'd be investigating OLED as my preferred technology. I definitely wouldn't want to replace plasma with an LED LCD television if I didn't have to. So I'd definitely look at OLED. But if it was 4K, then it would either be a Sony X9 for a TV, or my preferred option would be currently the VW500 would be my preferred option for projection.
Okay, so that was Melton Boy. Hopefully that's answered your question on Ask the Idiots. If you've got a question for us, then it's on Twitter at AVForums with the hashtag Ask the Idiots and ask your question. And I've got one more for Ed. Ed, basically the question was, when you look at most or almost all new AV amps, they come with an auto EQ system. Why is that not on HiFi amps?
Simply put, because there's huge resistance to them. They do feature on certain hi-fi amps. Lingdorf, or who sometimes call themselves Tact, depending on what year it is, have been offering a very sophisticated EQ system on their products for some years, and it's had a small number of people take it up, and then everyone else studiously ignore it. There's a perception, right or wrong, that with two speakers, it is more an instance of just simply getting them to behave within the room, because there's less, if you like, there's less sort of variance to what you're going to be doing with them than there is to try and bludgeon them into working electronically. And I'm the same. My two-channel system has no tone controls. It has a balance control, and that's it. So yeah, there's no adjustment. You just sort of move the speakers around a bit until it sort of dials into place. And in extremis, you might consider some sort of ISO platform for the speakers if you've got a bit too much bass. It's, if you like, it's just a bit. It's a sense of being a bit reactionary. There's also a sense that, as obviously digital is a big part of two-channel, but it happens at a source level. As most processing would need to be done in the digital domain, you'd be converting from analog to digital, and then you'd be converting from digital to analog and then back to digital to apply EQ, and then process it from there, which is considered a slightly inelegant solution.
Now, you see, the way I would look at it, Ed, is that you're looking at a box within a box. The room will always make a difference, and if you're going to do anything correctly to start with, is you're going to correct the room, and you're going to look at what the type of response is within that room, and then place your speakers within that space in the best optimum space before looking at EQ. And that's certainly what I would do with home theatre before applying EQ, Steve. One of the things is to work out the dimensions of the room, how the room's going to react, and it's fairly easy to do with some calculations, and then place the speakers where they should be placed. The only problem there is that unless it's a dedicated room, sometimes you can't place them in the best possible place, and that's where EQ has a benefit.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, Phil. Unless you're building a dedicated room, there's always going to be a degree of compromise, I think. It's unlikely you're going to find exactly the right place to put your speakers. But sensible speaker placement, and ideally using a room that's not a square, but a rectangle, will help. You know, there are things you can do quite easily to mitigate some of the impacts of the room on your system. And a lot of them, you know, are very cheap. You know, putting speakers in the correct places, maybe using things like soft furnishings to help absorb reflections, that kind of stuff. You don't have to start putting up, you know, absorption panels on the walls and you know, diffusers at the rear. You know, a bookcase and some books might be just effective at diffusing the sound as a diffuser would. So there's lots of things you can do that are completely free to help improve the performance of the room. Before you even start thinking about using any auto EQ system. Although I've got to say that in my experience, the auto EQ systems these days are getting better and better by the year. And anyone who's experienced Anthem's ARC2 will know that even at what I would consider to be, you know, the lower end of the price range, I know people will say £2,000's a lot of money, or even £1,000, but compared to what you can pay for equipment, and I'm thinking, you know, 20,000-30,000 quid, you can get a staggering amount of sophistication and flexibility from something in a receiver that's only between £1,500 and £2,000. So it's getting better and better. And you know, maybe I can understand why the hi-fi 2-channel would be resistant, but certainly in the multi-channel world, is becoming more important. And so
I guess if you look at the hi-fi world, it's kind of like saying to us, we're going to do away with 24 frames a second, we're going to 96 frames a second. Isn't it? It's like that, isn't it, basically?
There's an element of that. I mean, the other thing is, at the moment, two areas which enjoy very strong sales. You've got vinyl and you've got valve amplification. And vinyl for reasons of, as I say, converting between analog and digital, and valves because they are innately, again, fairly analog in the way they function. The idea of applying significant digital post-processing to either of them, you don't have to be necessarily desperately reactionary to find that to be a slightly awkward solution. And as I say, with two speakers and also a breathtaking variety of loudspeakers, it should not be rocket science to get them to behave themselves without heavy EQing. With 5, 6, 7 speakers and a subwoofer, and often where placement can't be absolutely optimal because, you know, furniture and other requirements get in the way, I think it makes an enormous amount more sense, and that has to be taken into account.
Okay, so hopefully that answered that question as well, and we're going to wrap up on hardware, and we'll be back in a second with games news. Mark, looking at games news, Twitch. I had never heard of this until I read an article today. I guess it's something which has escaped me and might have escaped quite a few listeners. So maybe you could explain what Twitch is and then why Amazon have bought them.
Twitch is primarily it's a video streaming site, and it's basically come to prominence because of its ability to stream game content, not like traditional edited trailers and the like, or edited reviews, they're just really someone playing a game and showing the content as it progresses. So they're giving a small commentary with it. So you're really kind of getting a full consumer view, another gamer's view of a game as they're playing. So they're making the kind of small comments about, you know, control schemes and how things are unfolding, rather than a kind of broad sweeping review that tells you, you know, how it all pans out and the like. And it's this Twitch service has proved a massive hit with people, to the point that it's kind of there from the ground floor with the latest series of consoles. So, you know, it's in a prominent position there. So you can be playing a game, then you can decide to start sharing your stream, or you can go and watch other people play games. And basically, Amazon have paid best part of $1 billion to buy it up. Google were in negotiations, but it seems like they've backed away because of potentially the deal could have been blocked due to anti-competition laws. And they couldn't agree any kind of a kind of fee should it get blocked at a late stage. So Amazon have swooped in, and it's one of those where it's interesting simply because it adds another kind of string to the bow of Amazon's streaming services. They've obviously got the Amazon Prime service now, and with this, they've got pretty much the best game streaming service out there. Unlike Google, who are perhaps going to push it more for advertising revenue, with Amazon, as they were slow to the phone market, this is one way to kind of get to the games and the TV market, really. If they want a box in the living room, if they want a box that people can perhaps maybe play rudimentary games at an early stage on, but simply that they might be streaming content from TV services and then have a look at what's going on with games, then it's a great way for Amazon just to get on your TV screens.
So I was really interested looking through what Twitch is all about and what the traffic is. 55 million uniques a month. That's some audience of people just watching other people play video games. And this seems to be something that certainly is huge in Korea, and it seems to be coming over here now and in the States, where it's becoming a spectator sport now to watch other people play video games, which seems quite alien to me.
It is, but if you consider the fact that, should we say, a large amount of games are being tailored towards online competitive elements, so therefore the traditional idea of a single player story is slowly almost becoming slightly outmoded. That you're getting games where they've got just a kind of token nod to a story, and it's basically built around the idea of competitive online gaming, and the reason for that is that that's got a far longer tail, and you can make money from that. So it's not just a solitary purchase, you can sell someone map packs, you can sell people additional content and continue monetizing that. And if, like me, you are absolutely abject at such games, watching someone else play is just a kind of great way to pick up tips, and it's it is almost like it's like a sport of sorts. You're watching people compete.
Okay.
I do like watching the retro playthroughs on certain old games I played as a kid. Just watching someone, give life to something I won't have played in sort of 20 odd years. Watching someone complete Rick Dangerous in like 20 minutes. That's just magic.
But isn't the danger of watching something like that the fact that it's going to be so demoralising because you're so shit at the game?
Working on that principle, very few people would watch professional football.
Well, I suppose. Yeah, but we all dream of it.
I could still make it. What are you talking about?
What, is playing games or playing football?
Oh, football, definitely.
And to wrap up on the games news for this week, Mark, Sony PSN disrupted again with a cyber attack?
Yes, Sony basically said that it looks like no personal details were pinched. It was DDoS attack, distributed denial of service, so it's basically designed to just stop people accessing the PlayStation network and block usage, which is becoming increasingly used as a form of kind of I suppose you say online protest. It's claimed there's kind of links to Islamic extremists, so it's an interesting kind of side shoot of the war on terror that you've got to take to Twitter. But the chap John Smedley, president of Sony Online Entertainment, was discussing it via Twitter, and then there was a bomb threat phoned in to basically divert his plane. So it's it has got quite serious.
It's a new frontier to be contested.
Wow, I didn't realise it was political as that.
Well, there's an element of it, yeah.
But don't forget, Al Qaeda have a press officer. Everyone's got to be, internet smart these days.
Yeah,
ISIS seem quite clued up when it comes to that kind of thing.
See, I can't see their name without thinking of ISS.
I can't think of it without thinking of Archer.
Archer, the TV show.
Yeah, because he works for ISIS, and I that's what when there was the on Twitter the other night with the Ask Islamic State hashtag. I asked them if they changed their name to avoid being associated with an alcoholic, borderline autistic cartoon character.
So it'll be gone soon. Thank you.
Well, we'll see.
Fatwa on you.
I don't think they necessarily instigated it, to be honest, but yeah.
And that wraps up games news. We'll be back in a sec with movies. Okay, Steve, time for us all to go for a pee. So what has been at the cinema?
Oh, this week, Phil, I saw Lucy, which is the new film written and directed by Luc Besson, starring Scarlett Johansson. I really like Nikita and Leon, but I've got to say, since then, from The Fifth Element onwards, really, Luc Besson's gone seriously downhill and spent much of the last 2 decades either making or producing the same kind of generic thrillers over and over again, most of which can take place in Paris. And Lucy, whilst it's not as bad as some of the stuff he's been doing recently, does quite often fall into that category. There's an element of science fiction to it. Basically, it starts off with that ridiculous premise, which is completely untrue, that we only use 10% of our brains, which isn't true at all. We use all of our brain. We only may not use all of it consciously, but we do use it all. But in the film, we only use 10%, and there's a drug which helps you access more of your brain. And throughout the course of the film, Lucy becomes exposed to the drug, played by Scarlett Johansson. Gradually, her access to her brain capacity increases from 10% to 100%. And this takes it into the realms of pure science fiction and fantasy to a certain extent too, because she develops kinetic powers and sort of powers beyond just pure intellectual ability. I guess you could look at it as a kind of superhero movie in effect. In her case, she has a bag of this drug sewn into her stomach as a way of smuggling it through a country's customs, but she gets kicked in the stomach, and that's what breaks it apart and exposes her to it in the same way I guess Spider-Man gets bitten by a radioactive spiderweb and develops superpowers. So she develops superpowers. The problem is she develops them quite early into the film, and therefore is never really at risk after that. So the action scenes are quite dull. I found them very dull because there's no real tension to them, because she can pretty much take out all the villains. All the villains, who, by the way, seem to be Koreans, even though the film starts off in Taiwan. I don't know if that's intentional, whether Luc Besson just didn't think anyone would notice that they were speaking Korean and not Taiwanese, or Mandarin in the case of Taiwan. But yeah, but to the last 20 minutes, it just goes completely off-piste and becomes this sort of metaphysical thing about the nature of time and evolution. And it just, it was really boring towards the end. And I just found it to be one of those films where he got carried away with the ideas and forgot about actually developing a coherent plot or any kind of sense of tension or danger or excitement. And for what's meant to be an action movie, I just was bored to tears for large sections of it because there was no real threat to her particularly. And you don't really like or know any of the other characters. And the best thing in it really is Scarlett Johansson, because at least she plays Lucy interesting. Starts off as a kind of just a normal early 20s girl, and then as she becomes exposed to the drug and therefore she evolves effectively intellectually, she changes, and her behavior and the way she talks, it varies. And she obviously is channeling both her performance as an alien and Under the Skin and as the voice of Samantha, the operating system in her, kind of combining the two in certain aspects. So she's interesting in it, but the film itself, I think, overreaches, loses its way towards the end, and isn't actually very exciting in terms of its action scenes.
It's a really unfortunate name for her as well.
Well, there's a reason why it's Lucy.
Well, isn't it date back to the Australopithecine or whatever?
The first human.
The problem is that that just makes it sound like the National Geographic. And then we're not talking about Scarlett Johansson. We're talking about a hairy semi-monkey. There's a point where she actually travels through time, God knows how, and actually meets Lucy, the ape, or humanoid ape, and then touches their fingers, and like the Sistine Chapel. It really is cobblers. I just thought it was the kind of thing you'd write when you were 12, or maybe if you were 18, you thought you were really good in English lit or something. And it's really, and he's intercutting scenes of animals and stuff like that, nature documentaries to try and give it some sort of gravitas, which completely fails. Morgan Freeman pops up, which makes you think immediately of Transcendence, which it has some similarities with. It's not very good. Kaz gave it 7 out of 10, and I think personally he's being incredibly generous to do that. I think it was a 5 at best. I actually nodded off a couple of times towards the end because it was just getting so boring and you just didn't care. And it was.
I think someone should make a rule that you can't just call a film just a name. I think it usually, like John Carter and that kind of thing. I
don't think it should have been called John Carter. That was just Disney bottoming it. It had the title of the word Mars in its title originally.
But that's the point. It just, I don't know, there's something just totally uncatchy about it. And you also think, well,
Leon, to be honest, I think that maybe I think Leon works perfectly well.
But that has a little grave, though, doesn't it? A little accent. So that makes all the difference.
The rule,
it being foreign makes it all right.
Exactly.
To be fair, the titles are the least of Lucy's problems. But anyway, it's I wouldn't bother going to see it myself unless I had to. Obviously, I think Kaz's review is fairly accurate in terms of his appraisal of the film and where it goes wrong. But I think he's very generous with the score. I think he's got a soft spot for Besson, which I don't have anymore. Whilst it's not perhaps as generic or as uninteresting or as bad as some of the other stuff that Luc Besson's been involved in, it just loses its way in the last 20 minutes and becomes a load of metaphysical bollocks. So 5 out of 10 from me, 7 out of 10 from Kaz. The other film I saw was Into the Storm, which for those of you who haven't seen Twister will be interesting, but if you have seen Twister, you know exactly what to expect. It is essentially, I mean, it's not a remake exactly, but it covers a lot of the same ground. You know, one big storm hitting a certain area in the course of a day, a group of disparate characters who get caught up together, and you know, obviously multiple twisters all over the place, ending up with a massive F5 that, you know, in this, obviously this being a modern film, it has to go one up from the previous film. So whilst Twister had a pretty big, you know, tornado, like a mile across, this one's got a tornado so big at the end it picks up 747s, which would suggest it had wind speeds in excess of 400 miles an hour, which seems unlikely. That would make it the biggest storm ever. But it's fun, you know. It's got some quite exciting moments in it. The effects are very well done, I thought. You know, the tornadoes and the CG were excellent. The characters are fairly uninteresting, and the actors don't have much to do apart from like run around and avoid debris. But at least there are moments that are quite exciting. By coincidence, my parents ended up seeing it with me because they wandered into the same cinema that I was in. Totally by coincidence. Totally by coincidence. And I was like, what are you doing here? And they said, oh, we thought we'd come and see a film. So, and they enjoyed it, actually. They really enjoyed it. And then I did not enjoy it, actually. I found it fun. I was sitting there thinking this is going to be a fantastic Blu-ray because it's a good picture and really good sound. So, yeah, I think it's probably maybe not bother seeing it at cinema, but definitely might be worth picking up on Blu-ray because it's going to sound amazing at home.
How many sharks were it?
No sharks are thrown around. They did have a flying cow, though, which I think was obviously a tip of the hat to Twister. But it's got an Atmos soundtrack, so if you can, I don't know where it's playing, but if you can see it in Atmos, I think that'll be pretty interesting. And definitely, I think it will make a great demo disc when it comes out on Blu-ray. And it is a fun film. So if you're looking for a fun evening at Netflix when you don't have to think too much, just want to be entertained, it works very well. I gave it 7 out of 10. I think that's a fair score. It's well made. It's fun in places. It's very exciting at times. It's utterly ludicrous at other times, obviously. There was one moment in it that I don't think it's meant to be funny, but the whole audience started laughing, and so it was unintentionally funny. But on the whole, it was a good laugh, and 7 out of 10. I still prefer Twister, though.
I'm disappointed there's no sharks in it.
Well, you can go and see Sharknado, or Sharknado 2, or Sharknado 3. Have you actually seen Sharknado?
No, I've just seen the highlights.
You can watch it on Netflix.
Isn't there? There's also one on the Sci-Fi Channel with stone tornadoes.
Oh.
And basically, there's like, how can this happen? And the bloke just goes, they just do, all right?
Yeah, there's a couple of videos on YouTube, Steve, which is just the best bits of Sharknado and Sharknado 2, and it's just hilarious. It really is.
I take it when you say the best bits.
Like the most ludicrous, funny... Well, the films are just ludicrous. So it's just all the most over-the-top bits and really painful dialogue all in one sort of 4-minute video. It's fantastic.
My sister-in-law is actually busy working up a script to try and flog to these people. I'm not giving you the details away, but it's magnificent. It deserves its place in the sci-fi movies pantheon. So fingers crossed.
Well, we'll look forward to that one, Ed. Moving
Absolutely.
on. Blu-ray's released next week, Steve.
Yeah, we've got The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I should probably apologise at this point because I think I had that up a couple of weeks ago. It was coming out, but I got the date wrong. It's coming out next week. Okay,
so we don't need to go... If you want to know about The Amazing Spider-Man, go and download last week's podcast because Steve describes it last week's. Right. Sons of Anarchy Season 6, The Honourable Woman, Ghostbusters 1 and 2, and Cosmos. Which ones out of there would you pick?
I've never actually seen Sons of Anarchy, but I know Mark Hodgkinson is a big fan. So I guess if he was here, we say definitely check that out. I have heard good things about the series, and I keep meaning to watch it. I haven't got around to it. The Honourable Woman was on BBC just recently, so I think it just finished last week. So it's a quick turnaround to disc. Again, I haven't seen that, but apparently it's very, very good, and I'm quite tempted to buy it because it sounded excellent. And I'm sorry I missed it. That stars Maggie Gyllenhaal, and apparently it's a very tough watch, but it's very good. Ghostbusters 1 and 2, I'm going to get that.
I thought
love
I thought
Ghostbusters.
I thought they were released recently.
No, it got a brief cinema release for one
Were they
day.
not out mastered in 4K discs?
Ghostbusters did. This is basically Ghostbusters, and they've also remastered Ghostbusters 2 and put them together. I don't think Ghostbusters 2 was available on Blu-ray before.
Okay.
And I wouldn't. I mean, I've only seen Ghostbusters 2 once, so I really don't remember much about it. But I probably will pick it up just because I get Ghostbusters 2 as well, and also I think there's some new stuff on it, like a new documentary, that kind of thing, worth seeing. And then there's the series Cosmos, which is the new series, obviously based originally upon Carl Sagan's series in the 70s, Cosmos, with Neil deGrasse Tyson, executive produced by Seth MacFarlane of all people. And I just started watching it on Netflix US. It looks fun. So if you're into space and science, might be worth picking up.
Does it do Seth MacFarlane style cutscenes?
No, it doesn't. It does do. There are animated sequences in it though, actually, but not cutscenes.
And no Conway Twitty.
And no Conway. Well, not so far anyway. But
Okay.
maybe they'll find room for him. Yes, that's what's out this week. So a pretty quiet week actually next week. I guess it's that time of year really.
Okay, and of course it's IFA next week, so the podcast we're going to be talking about IFA and that kind of thing next week. I'm just trying to see what else we're wrapping up on here. Ed, what's your favourite war move?
War move? Or war movie?
War move.
It should be movie, but Steve's written war move. So what? And I know you've studied war, so what is your favourite war move?
It's got to be Eric von Manstein's backhand, and that's what he actually called it, named after the tennis stroke. Essentially, it consists of making your opposition push large quantities of their own armour forward, overexert themselves, wait until they are waiting on fuel and rearming, and then you essentially hit them on the backhand on the counterstroke, and provided that you've got enough room to do it, like say the Ukraine. It works extremely well. And the favourite argument of armchair historians is that if Manstein, and to a lesser extent his other chap, who was sort of semi in command on D-Day, von Rundstedt, had their way and had been allowed to have all of their defences sort of parked outside Paris and done something similar, there is an argument that they probably wouldn't have won, but they might have made a better fist of defending France than as it was piling everything forward into Normandy and having it hacked to pieces by vastly superior amounts
Wasn't
of
that
air force.
part of Montgomery's plan to deliberately draw the Germans into Caen, wasn't it?
Well,
and thus tie them
yes,
down in
except
one spot whilst the rest of the...
That worked after a fashion. It was kind of expensive in terms of material and people lost. But yes, in an absolute sense, it worked. It kept the Germans pointing in one direction, whilst Patton et al. Were able to loop round the back of them. So yeah, it functioned. But essentially, it had the backhand approach been taken into account, Normandy would have been effectively sacrificed in the immediate term. You know, all the Allies would have met all of their day one objectives and more. They would not have encountered significant opposition until they were out of all the hedgerows and stuff. But I mean, it's all back into the what if and conjecture and the like. So you know, what happened. And you know, it's no real point. Yes, absolutely. There's no real point.
So where did he use the backhand technique?
After the fall of Stalingrad, after the encirclement of Stalingrad in late 1942, early 43, he basically watched this counteroffensive, come out from there. He waited until they got to Kharkov, which I believe is in the Ukraine, and they were pretty much exhausted by that point, and basically just did the equivalent of just snapping the end of that offensive spearhead off. And it was probably the last really big success the Germans ever really had in the East. It was a very, very economical mission, very exercise in terms of the exchange rate of losses and the like. It was just a very elegant piece of generaling, and you can sort of be allowed to admire Manstein because he didn't do anything thoroughly unpleasant towards either various ethnic minorities or other people. So he's not entirely evil either. So go him.
So there you go, dear listener. You learned something new every week on the AVForums podcast. So there you go. That's Ed's favourite war move. So let's move on to our favourite war movies, Steve. And why are we asking this question?
Well, the reason I put the question in was purely because my favourite war film is A Bridge Too Far, which was directed by Richard Attenborough, who, as we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, died yesterday at the age of 90. And so I thought it might be interesting to see what I was specifically thinking of Ed here, given that he studied war at university. He might have a different perspective on war films. And I think war films do fall into two categories these days: those that were made before Saving Private Ryan and those that were made after Saving Private Ryan. But my personal favourite is A Bridge Too Far for a number of reasons. Apart from the fact I saw it when I was a kid in '77. My dad took me to the cinema, and I really, really enjoyed it because I was, being any kid of the '70s, you kind of grew up on war movies, and they were very much the old school war movies. Where it was all daring do, and the Germans were a bunch of bastards, Nazis were horrible, and the good guys were all stiff upper lip, and it was like, Clint Eastwood with two machine guns giving it loads, and Where Eagles Dare, and you think this is all brilliant. Whereas A Bridge Too Far was a genuine attempt to tell the Battle of Arnhem as accurate as possible. There are mistakes in it, and a couple of scenes which I find really galling, but on the whole, it's reasonably successful in its attempt to be historically accurate within the confines of a 3-hour movie. And it also is one of the first films the first one I'd seen that really showed war to be unpleasant and not as exciting and fun and full of, Clint Eastwood and people like that. It was, an anti-war film in many respects, and that was kind of a new thing to me as a kid. Since then, of course, I think Private Ryan has set a standard in terms of both capturing battle footage in a film and also taking it to a level of reality or hyper-reality that is sometimes can be considered, disturbing, and really it makes you. Well, I think that's as close as I ever want to get to being anywhere near a war. And I think any film made since then has always been influenced by it.
Well, you see, I think I know you're saying war movie here, but after that, I think Band of Brothers and Pacific are probably the best made, most accurate look and portrayal at war.
Band of Brothers is for me is a superior portrayal to Private Ryan.
I agree, actually, Ed, because Private Ryan's reputation rests upon the opening 20 minutes, the Omaha Beach landing, which is staggering. Yep. The rest of that film is very much a traditional men on a mission war movie.
Yep.
Whereas, as I say, Band of Brothers, the thing about Band of Brothers and the Pacific, I will say that, I didn't enjoy the Pacific as much, but what they effortlessly capture is that people die all the time. It doesn't take big engagements where something important happens. People just get killed and horribly injured and horribly maimed day in, day out, and often in the most ignominious of circumstances. And I think that and the German film Stalingrad capture that just with a degree of cold-hearted effortlessness that is what needs to be done to portray these films correctly.
I've got to say, after seeing the beginning of Saving Private Ryan, I said to myself rather selfishly, thank God I wasn't around back then. Yeah. Which is a very selfish thing to think when you think of the sacrifices made, in both the big world wars, just the sheer sacrifice that was made by people and the sheer horror, absolutely everything that goes on, which for me the war movie's always been a very love it and leave it subject, because I have this feeling where I think war should never be for entertainment, and how can it be for entertainment when it is so gross? You know what I'm getting at. It's such a horrible thing, but at the same time, I guess through our curiosity, human curiosity, we want to know more. We want to know about, what was it like, and so on. So, I guess to a certain degree, you could say that the war movie has certain things that it has to portray and it has to do accurately to do it any good. So it's interesting that you mentioned the movies that were made after the war, Steve, the ones that you watched when you were a kid in the 70s, because the tone is so different to what you would get now with a filmmaker making a movie or a TV series like Band of Brothers or whatever about the effects of war.
But you also don't forget that war movies are a subsection of history, and they are shaped as much by the conflicts that society finds themselves
that was
fighting
what I
at
was
any
trying to
given
get at, Ed. You know, on the one hand, we shouldn't have war films for entertainment's sake, but there's the whole history thing, and there's a whole thing. I mean, the beginning of Saving Private Ryan, that should be shown to every school kid in this country, as should Schindler's List, in my opinion.
There's a danger, though, that then you're only getting the Spielbergian view of history. The Holocaust is far greater than just the story of Oskar Schindler, in the same way that World War II or any war is very different from just the Omaha beach landings, which actually were the exception to the landings of D-Day, and most of them weren't like that at all.
Yeah,
there was a lot less resistance on most of the other beaches. But I think the thing is, any war film very much reflects its time, as you just said. So, for example, war films made during the war were very patriotic, very nationalistic, very much about getting
Well, they were just pure propaganda.
Propaganda, effectively, yeah. And those made after the war, so in the 50s and 60s, reflected an opinion, or reflected a time more than they did. I don't think anyone was quite as stiff-upper-lipped, or the war was quite as black and white, or it definitely wasn't as black and white as it often made out to be in those films. I think by the time you got to the 60s, it was far enough removed from the Second World War, I'd say 20 years later, that you could actually treat it as entertainment, which is very much what they were in the 60s and 70s, I think. And then there was a definite shift towards treating war, saying, well, hang on, this isn't entertainment, as you just said, Phil. This is something serious. So I think someone like that, I probably did start with A Bridge Too Far, because that was one of the first films that tried to tell as accurately as possible Operation Market Garden as a piece of history, and showing you that war was unpleasant on both sides. And there's always these stories within it, acts of heroism, terrible things that happened. And that's what war is like. And I think Spielberg's view was very much, when making Private Ryan, was he wanted to do the veterans justice and tell that as it really happened. And I think most filmmakers since then have taken that view as well. Probably the exception would be Terrence Malick, whose Thin Red Line, is typical Malick in a way. It's about
utterly baffling.
Yeah, quite. Yeah, lots of shots of the jungle.
Utterly unentertaining. I would sooner try and eat a pint glass.
Well, I think there's kind of, the problem is you've got war films which are centered around actual battles, and then you've got war films which are basically kind of your standard allegories for kind of human barbarism and the like. I mean, Apocalypse Now, are we counting that very much as a war film?
I don't think it is a war film.
No, that I wouldn't necessarily. But if you look at the list of war films, they're really, most of them probably fall closer to the latter category of being about individuals and their struggles, as opposed to, like A Bridge Too Far, trying to actually retell particular historical conflicts and trying to tell them with some kind of accuracy, because I think in a sense that's actually just too damn hard to do.
Yes, I think there's definitely an element of that. I mean, you often find that when you're not doing individuals, the best way is to, if you like, artificially contain it. This is where Stalingrad works quite effectively, because it is a unit, a very small unit of people, and Das Boot is equally effective because it's a closed set. It is a submarine. It's got 84 people on it or whatever, and many of them simply just pop around in the background. So it puts it a manageable sense of perspective on what is a very large event. And trying to get it sorted in any other way is quite complicated. I mean, where war films get particularly interesting is when you're dealing with film portrayals of wars that didn't go desperately well. So obviously Vietnam films are in themselves, if we discount the efforts of John Wayne and Chuck Norris in this particular regard, they have a very different tone. And then obviously there's not been much done yet about our latest adventures in foreign climes, but you get what's the one that won the Oscar?
Hurt Locker.
Yeah, and then Zero Dark 30, obviously both by the same director. They're not.
Yeah,
neither of them are exactly what you call celebratory,
aren't they? More of a political commentary, I think, in some respects. What about let's move away from World War II then. What about, because I really love the film Waterloo, because
it's
again it really
good.
lays out the battle. I think Steiger's great as Napoleon, and I think Christopher Plummer's excellent as Duke of Wellington. And there's nothing more impressive in those pre-CG days than seeing 20,000 real people on a field enacting like this when they're forming the squares. There's a brilliant shot in that film where you follow the French cavalry and they go over the crest of a hill, and over the crest of a hill there are like about 10 giant squares of troops, and you think, me. And that's for real. There's not very often these days you never think that in a film, because you just think, oh, CGI. That's one of the few films I wish they bring out on Blu-rays. I'd love to have it on Blu-ray, where you just think, holy shit, that's not being faked. Those are real people standing there.
Well, the other alternative war movie, Braveheart, they did that. They had real battlefields.
Trust me, not on the same scale as Wolf.
No, not on the same scale. But
Mel Gibson.
you were saying about modern movies. Well, I think that's the last modern movie that ever did that had thousands and thousands of extras.
Yeah, and also it was quite brutal and violent in that modern sensibility that I didn't get so much of in the past. I mean, there's definitely been we've been slightly desensitized, haven't we, over the years, through, albeit television, the news, and news coverage of wars, and then films and video games, whatever else. But they have become progressively. But there's been a real trend towards, if you're going to show violence, show it as realistically as possible. And Braveheart was pretty bloody, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was bloody good.
And I'm sure that's what battles were like back then. Brutal, vicious, just thumping crap out of each other with great big swords and hammers and whatever else you get your hands on. And if you got injured, you were almost certainly going to die. So, yeah.
And of course,
historically bollocks, obviously.
And of course, the results of that movie will be known on the 18th of September.
Yes. Wasn't it that what's that Scottish comedian Kevin
Bridges?
Yeah, where he's going, they should show Braveheart and Train Spotting on the same night. It's like, yeah, this is us. This is also us. So I thought it was quite clever.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so I guess we've got to wrap this up with our favourite war movies, if we have any. So let's go to Mark Botwright first. What was yours?
Depending on definition, I'll plumb with Apocalypse Now, simply because it's the easiest.
Okay, Mr. Withers.
Bridge Too Far.
Ed Selley.
Stalingrad, but don't take that as to mean that I watch it with great enthusiasm week in, week out. It's good for about once a year, and to say it has a depressing ending is an understatement to rival all.
Just to clarify, Ed, you're talking about the German film and not that terrible Russian one that came out this year.
No. This is the German one, and it's bloody marvellous. It probably doesn't have a Blu-ray release. Don't worry about it. You'll cope with 576 lines. Just get a copy and watch it. It's magnificent.
Okay, I think I'm going to be different here and plump for the Band of Brothers box set. Just to be
I don't know. That's not a movie though. It's a mini-series.
Yeah,
or it's a long movie. It depends how you define it.
Well,
have you seen it at cinema?
On broadcast television as a TV series. Ergo, it's not a film.
All right. Okay. It's still my choice.
Fine, then I'm going to pick Tropic Thunder then.
In that case, I'm picking Aliens.
Braveheart.
What about Star Wars?
Transformers the movie, the cartoon one. That's a savage.
Yeah, well, it's got wars in the title, isn't it? So it counts.
And it's a historical conflict as well, don't forget.
Yeah, it happened a long time ago. Right, enough of this silliness. That is all we got time for on the podcast this week. My thanks go to Steve Withers,
Flatten Arnhem,
Mark Botwright.
Have you ever been liberated before?
And Ed Selley.
He's dead. I'm crippled. You're lost.
Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Bookmark AVForums.com for the latest reviews, news and video. Plus, you can also leave us a rating on iTunes. If you enjoyed the show, I'm Phil Hinton. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you again next Wednesday.